Hello and welcome into another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. I'm Kyle Glaser alongside three-time Padres All-Star closer Heath Bell, here to break down all things San Diego Padres. Heath, we got the first spring training game coming up tomorrow. Padres playing the Mariners at the Peoria Sports Complex. Baseball is finally here. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch baseball again, especially, sit down in front of the TV and kind of watch the boys play. So this is kind of the best time of year. And it's also one of the times I get really jealous because I'm like, I'm old and got gray hair and can't play anymore. And so now I got to watch it. So all good.
So we won't have a Heath Bell comeback tour?
You never know. Somebody gives me a shot. I still got an arm. I can throw a knuckleball. Let's see what that happens.
There we go. Hey, we saw Jamie Moyer pitch till he was almost 50, so you never know. There's always a need for arms in the game today. Heath, as you mentioned, everyone I think is excited for baseball to be back, but that's especially true for the Padres this offseason. Again, a lot of just frustration, first and foremost, with ownership and everything going on there, the uncertainty with the lawsuit. On top of that, we saw the Padres have very limited financial resources to build on last year's 93-win team. They lost Jerkson Profar in free agency. They lost Ha-Seong Kim in free agency. They lost Kyle Higashioka in free agency. So there were a lot of significant losses. That said, there were some moves that were made this offseason, most of them of the minor variety, as well as more just keeping guys that were already in-house. Nonetheless, with spring training games getting started tomorrow, I think it's prudent to look at this offseason and the moves they did make and grade them out. We're going to have a little bit of a report card session here where Professor Bell, Professor Glaser go through all the moves the Padres made or in some cases didn't make and grade them out as we head into the 2025 season. Heath, you ready for it?
I'm ready. Just forgive me for the letter grades I give you.
So I think the first thing we want to start with is the decision to keep, I'm going to lump these two together, Dylan Cease and Michael King. The Padres had a lot of discussions about whether or not these guys would be traded. They were frequently in trade rumors as we enter spring training. They're both still on the team. And again, keep in mind with all these moves we're talking about, trades can still be made. There's still going to be tweaks to the roster. That's the nature of spring training as well as the Padres in particular. So things can still change. But now that the offseason is quote unquote over and spring training games are beginning, what grade do you give the Padres for the decision to keep Dylan Cease and Michael King?
Honestly, I give him like a minus or a B plus, and the reason I kind of give him that is because there were so many trade talks, and that does bother you a little bit, especially if you want to be you want to be in an organization or a city for a long time. And then I don't know exactly what went behind doors, but I'm pretty sure some of them, I don't know if it was King or Cease that was saying, hey, were they talking about like, let's do a long-term deal, let's do a 2 or 3 year deal or whatnot, and then for whatever reason it stopped. Maybe it was the ownership or whatnot. But if there was talks and then there was talks about a long-term deal and then there was a talk about trading them, that would bother me or anybody on the team. So, but the key thing is they're on the team right now, and they're both great starters, and hopefully we can keep him for a long time. And, hopefully this offseason was just kind of an ugly offseason, but we can just go out and play ball, and then we can get everything done this towards the end of the season / this next offseason. So if I had to give it really a grade, I'm going to give it like an A minus. So, because it was great, but that minus is the trade talks. And, there was a lot of trade talks. I remember ESPN, everybody for like 2 weeks they were talking about was Padres going to trade those two guys. So, or it was who are they going to trade? And that's got to, I know you're training and stuff, but you see it on TV and it sucks. I've been there. So, but yeah, I give it an A minus.
Fair enough. I give it an A just because these are two of the best starters in the National League. You talk about how hard it is to find good, quality, durable starting pitchers. And Dylan Cease and Michael King, they do everything you want. They log innings, they miss bats, they limit walks, they pitch well in big games. These are two of the most valuable players in the National League right now. And at the end of the day, it didn't make sense for the Padres to trade them unless the package was just going to be absolutely massive, a franchise-altering kind of package where they got back multiple controllable young big leaguers that would help them compete this year and into future years. And we see teams more often than not just aren't willing to part with packages like that for players with only 1 year remaining. We saw last year, for example, the Orioles, the Corbin Burns trade for DL Hall and Joey Ortiz. Those are two nice young big leaguers, but neither of them project to be stars. And Corbin Burns is one of the best pitchers in baseball. Again, I think you could argue the Brewers would have had a better shot at winning a World Series if they just kept Corbin Burns on their team. So for me, at the end of the day, it really didn't make sense to trade either of these two guys, just given how much talent was on the roster. There was still a chance to compete. And by trading either of them, you were going to really harm your chances. I think it would have been the difference between being a playoff caliber team and not being a playoff caliber team. So while certainly it's always messy anytime there's rumors and it just creates a lot of frustration, at the end of the day, they made the right decision. I do give them a straight up A for keeping both Dylan Cease and Michael King. And again, if at the trade deadline, things have gone really poorly for the Padres this year and things just haven't worked, you're still going to be able to get something in value for them at the deadline. We see teams at times are actually willing to trade a little more at the deadline because they're more desperate if they're in it. I think about, the Tanner Scott acquisition last year. It was great for the Padres, but they gave up a haul for him. I think that it's not unlikely they could get a similar haul for Dylan Cease or Michael King at the deadline. So again, A's all around. I thought this was a really, really good move and frankly, the best decision they made all offseason. Heath, I want to move into another key player who is going to be a free agent after this season. The Padres elected to keep after being in trade rumors, and that was Luis Arraez. What grade do you put on the decision to keep him?
Probably make it a B just because there's not a whole lot of power or whatnot. And I think his stock has probably hit the highest it has been. So, it's kind of hard. What positions can he play? He's not a typical DH guy, but he gets on base. And, here's the thing is Profar we lost last year, but nobody expected Profar to do what he did. So if Profar would have just had a normal year, then Arraez probably wouldn't have done that well. I don't think, probably would have still hit the batting title, but as the team, just getting guys on and this and that. So, I just give it a B because I really thought they were going to trade him because you have a lot of guys that can fill in the spots, but, with power and the average is always good. But, if you can't score from first base and stuff, then you still need 2 hits to get you in. So, it's like anybody else. You could take the slowest guy on the team and with 2 hits, he could score. So I just give it a B. He's still a good player, and I like him in a Padre uniform. I just don't know. Is he going to be the leadoff man? Is he going to be the 2-hole? Where is he going to fit in the lineup this year? So it's going to be interesting to see.
I think you and I have very different opinions of Luis Arraez, which actually is representative of the divisive opinions of him in Major League Baseball. I give him this an A minus. Right now, the hardest thing to do in the game is make consistent quality contact. We see that over and over and over again. And Luis Arraez, for me, is really the best in the game at it. I remember talking to Sean Murphy, the Braves catcher, now A's catcher. Braves catcher at the All-Star game a few years ago. And this was when Arraez was on the Marlins. And he has talked about how much of a headache it was having to face him, trying to get him out. You felt helpless, like there was nothing you could do. That's pretty powerful. And I remember talking to Juan Soto there at the All-Star Game too in Seattle. This was when Soto was a Padre and Arraez was a Marlin. And Soto just spoke about Arraez in absolute awe, his ability to get the bat to the ball, his hand-eye coordination. And I think there's just, people who are looking at just WAR and data miss the point that it is just so maddening for a pitcher. When you have a guy, you're making your pitches and it just doesn't matter. The guy's still going to get the barrel of the ball. He's probably still going to end up on base. At the end of the day, that's a really good thing to have at the top of your lineup. And especially given how top heavy the Padres lineup is, it's not like there's a ton of lineup depth here. I thought keeping him was the right decision. Just again, the unique skill set, what he brings, and where they are as an offense. So I love the move. But again, I think everything you've said is fair. And I think it's emblematic of some of the divisive opinions about Luis Arraez in the game today. I want to go to the back of the bullpen, your specialty, closer. Again, Robert Suarez, another standout player, an all-star. Padres decided to keep him. He was also in trade rumors all offseason. What grade do you put on the decision to keep Robert Suarez?
I think I give it an A because you got to have a good solid back end of the bullpen. You got to you lost some pieces to the bullpen, but you can also fill those voids with some other guys. And there's always the next guy coming along. And if you have like a Trevor Hoffman or myself or somebody down there, you have Robert down there. You kind of know, okay, the ninth inning's locked up. Now we just need to get some guys to fill that void. Maybe King can go 7-8 innings, kind of the old school way. But it's one of those things. I like it because if you kind of get rid of your whole bullpen and you don't have anybody to replace anybody, then you kind of look into, okay, we might be able to hit. We have starting pitching, but can we finish out a game? So I give it an A. I like Robert keeping, as a Padre. I like him to stay here, and I'd like to see him stay here for a long time, but who knows what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, again, Robert Suarez really established himself as one of the best closers in the National League. And I think what's been really, really key for him, too, that a lot of people aren't talking about is he's been money in the postseason. Now, again, he gave up the famous home run to Bryce Harper, the swing of his life homer in the NLCS. But every other postseason series, he has yet to allow a run. 10 postseason series, he's only allowed a run in one of them. 10 postseason games. He's only allowed runs in 2 of them. It was one series in Philly. He's been dominant against the Dodgers in particular in the postseason. So I give this one an A. Again, I think this is one of the premier closers in baseball. I think if the Padres were going to trade someone, he was the one who made the most sense just because you have Adrian Morejon back there. You have Jeremiah Estrada back there. You have Jason Adam back there. They could have withstood his loss more than the loss of Cease, King, or Arraez. But at the same time, having him in the ninth inning and all those other guys, 6, 7, 8, you still feel really good that if you have a lead after 5, you're probably going to win the game. And that's pretty powerful. So again, I give this one an A as well. And I think the Padres are in good shape. All right, Heath. So we've talked about the decisions to keep players. Now I want to talk about the decisions they've made to add players and what you think of those various moves. I want to start with the signing of Nick Pivetta. Became official earlier this week. Signed him from the Red Sox for 4 years and potentially $55 million. There's some opt-outs in there. The Padres also forfeited a second-round draft pick by doing so, as well as $500,000 from their international bonus pool because he declined a qualifying offer. What grade do you give the decision to sign Nick Pivetta?
Do you think Nick's going to be a starter? Or
Yeah, look, they signed him to be a starter. He was a good starter last year, but it is relevant that he got moved to the bullpen only 2 years ago. And that's something we definitely have to consider in putting a grade on this.
So honestly, I'd give it probably like a C plus. I was surprised it was a 4-year deal or whatnot. Maybe there's the options, opt outs that I didn't get or didn't understand. But it's just somebody that's kind of been around a little bit. Now there's a lot of upside to Nick. I think he's going to be able, he could do what I did in San Diego from New York and a lot of other guys where he could kind of just, kind of show up on the map per se, and become one of the big stars that he probably knows he can and he has potential to, but he just hasn't done it. So, and then the difference between pitching in New York, in Boston with the short porch and, you always have to worry about that. A fly ball can be a home run, where in San Diego, everybody says it's huge enough. But the thing is the West has, I think, the best pitching around, now the best hitting around. Dodger Stadium is pretty big. San Francisco, it just depends where the wind's blowing. Colorado, if you keep the ball down, Colorado's ball's not going to go. But if you get the ball up, it's going to go. Arizona is, it's a hit and miss. So I think he has potential doing really well in San Diego. I give it a C plus, maybe a B minus. It's just going to be, what kind of player is Nick going to show up? Is he going to be the Nick that everybody knows is, or is he going to be the guy that he knows that he can be? That potential, the stud that he thinks he can be. If he's going to show up in San Diego or Peoria right now and just go, look, I'm going to be on this team and I'm going to be one of the best starters. We don't have Joe Musgrove this year. I'm going to take his spot because we don't have him this year. If he takes that attitude, then I think it'll probably be like a B plus, maybe even an A minus, decision signing him. But it really, right now, it's a C plus just because what kind of pitcher are we going to get? Is the Padre organization going to use him as a starter, or are they going to bounce him around, starting a couple games, then, relieve because we need some relievers or a long guy? What's the deal? So that really messes with guys. I'm not a starter, but trust me, when a starter goes to the bullpen, he hates that place. He doesn't like being there. So it's, what kind of player is Nick going to be in Peoria and in San Diego this year? I'm hoping that he's going to do really well, but right now I just give it a C plus.
Yeah, I give it a B minus. And I think for me, it's not about Nick Pivetta per se. I think it's what the Padres paid to acquire him. Nick Pivetta, over the course of his career, has been a below average to league average starter. He's never really been an above average starter. And you look at the peripherals and they look great. But the main issue is he gives up a lot of hard contact in the air. Look, the Padres are making a big bet that by moving him from the AL East to the NL West and having him pitch in front of a much better defense, the run prevention will improve. Because let's be frank, the Red Sox defense has been cover your eyes bad for years. I have felt so bad for every pitcher who's had to pitch in front of that defense.
I think
And I
they
understand
defense with their eyes closed, to be honest with you.
yeah, and again, I understand that bet. It's not an illogical bet, but it's the kind of bet you make on a guy, okay, we'll give you, 1 year, 10, $12 million prove it
Yeah,
contract.
1 or 2 year deal. I didn't think 4 years was really
Right. I think to give a guy you are hoping a change of scenery will benefit for 4 years, 55 million, potentially, they're potentially on the hook for that, and forfeiting a second round pick and forfeiting 500K out of the international bonus pool. I just really thought it was an overpay. Now, again, if Nick Pivetta shows up, he works with Ruben Niebla, all those things click for him, we could look back at this podcast at the end of the year and be like, man, we were dumb. This turned out to be a great signing. I can see that happening. But I think at this point, just given his career arc, given some of the risks involved, and given that you're betting on a change of scenery helping him get to the next level, I just think the price was way, way too high for the Padres to pay. There were other guys who you could say, hey, we think a change of scenery will help improve his production for a way lower cost. Cal Quantrill is someone I mentioned as well, who the peripherals aren't as sexy as Nick Pivetta, but at the end of the day, the name of the game is run prevention. And over the course of his career, Quantrill's actually been better at it than Pivetta.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see. Again, this is the one, we say this now. I hope that works out great. I hope the Padres are proven right and we're wrong, because that would mean they have a really good top 4 starters. But at this point, B- for me, C+ for you. Heath, moving down into the first major league free agent the Padres signed this offseason, Elias Diaz, catcher, 1 year, $3.5 million. What grade do you give this one?
We need a catcher, so I kind of give it a C+ or B- again. Here's the hard part. If we're always just going to get catchers for a 1 year deal, or if we're flipping catchers in every year, it kind of seems that way. The catching position, we tried this guy out this year, and midseason we go to another guy, and then the next season we're flip flopping, we're doing other things. It's hard to get the catchers and pitchers, relationship together. So, I'd love to make it like, a B, but really I'd say it's a C+, just because, we needed a catcher, but what are we doing? Are we going to just get him for 1 year? Are we just, what's going to happen mid-season? Are we going to go out and get somebody else? We've for a long time, we've been talking about this hot, prospect catcher coming up. I kind of feel like if this year goes south, we need to call him up. We need to get him ready for the playoffs and get him ready for the season and see what's going on. And is this guy going to be our future, or are we going to find somebody else? So right now, I just, I like Diaz as a player. I really do. But just in the situation, I just give it a C+.
Yeah, I give this one a C as well. I think we have to look at Elias Diaz just kind of objectively. He's never really hit outside of Colorado, and he's been very error prone in his career. His defense has been very up and down, but he's always committed a lot of errors. I think the main issue for me was and you have to tie this a little bit into the left field acquisitions as well. Between Elias Diaz, Jason Hayward, and Connor Joe, the Padres guaranteed the three of them $5.5 million. I personally believe a much better way to have spent that money would have been to just go into the season with Luis Camposano and Martin Maldonado as your catchers and spend $5 million of that to sign Austin Hays in left field. I think the Padres would have been a better team with Luis Camposano and Martin Maldonado behind the plate and Austin Hays in left field than they are with Elias Diaz and Luis Camposano behind the plate, Jason Hayward and Connor Joe in left field. Again, Austin Hays is a great player who, I shouldn't say great player. He's a good player, has power, good athlete, not the highest on base percentage in the world, but he can hit for power. He can run. He's a good defender. He's an everyday player who just had a bad year last year due to injuries. He's still in his prime. He's in his late 20s. I just think the Padres could have invested that money better. And that's why, for me, the Elias Diaz acquisition is a C. And that actually moves us into the Jason Hayward, Connor Joe discussion, which for me, at least, is related. What do you? We're going to lump these two together. What do you give the Padres as a grade for signing these two for a combined $2 million to essentially be a left field platoon?
I give it a C because honestly, they're just throwing the dice out there and to see what happens, and they're just hoping one of them, catches fire. That's really what they're doing right now. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if AJ mid spring training finds somebody else. I like what you said, Austin Hayes. I never even thought about that, but I thought about when you were talking, I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense than signing Diaz. Just having Maldonado there and Camposado, and here's the thing: is some organizations sometimes you have to go with who you have in AAA, or that guy that like Maldonado, we signed him as a AAA, but really you just come in healthy, you're going to win the job. We just need you. We're not giving you a guaranteed contract. That's basically all it says in spring training. So you sometimes have to go with what you have in the farm system, or that's the point of having a farm system. And, right now we're just trying to, throw shit at the wall and see which one sticks in left field. I mean, Hayward, I like Jason. He's a good talent. He's been around. He had a down year, whatnot. And then Joe's a hometown kid. So I like that. A lot of hometown kids, you just feel good playing at home, this and that. But really we're just trying to find, spark in we're trying to find, I don't know what the saying is, but like, spark in the fire or fire in the spark or something like that. Basically what Profar did last year. We brought him back as a small contract, but because he did horrible in Colorado. Yeah. And it was like, all right, well, we can platoon him and somebody else, and he just caught fire. And I think they're looking for that to happen with, Jason or Joe. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and again, Jason Hayward certainly, still has some things to offer. He's still a good defender, still has some power, and obviously a great leader in the clubhouse. And Connor Joe's a very easy guy to root for. He sees some right-handed power, can do some damage against lefties, has some positional versatility. So, again, each of them have things to offer. I think for me, it's not so much about them as much as, again, using that money to the limited financial resources the Padres have to put the best possible team on the field. I don't think they did that with, what they could have done with that $5.5 million they used on Diaz, Hayward, and Joe. I just think it would have been a much, much better investment to invest that in Austin Hayes, let Martin Maldonado be your backup catcher, and then you still have an extra $500K to play with, given Hayes signed 1 year, $5 million with the Reds.
The bad side is if you did that and say Austin Hayes got hurt or didn't do well, you can't just release him. Like, if Joe doesn't do well and Hayward does, they can release one or the other. They can, that's probably what AJ's thinking about. If I cut the money up, then I could just release guys, save up a little bit of money and not just bank on one guy that's even a solid player.
Yeah.
But, that's the business part of the game. I'd rather sign 4 guys and hopefully one of them figures it out than sign one guy that I know exactly what I'm going to get. And he's going to fill the void that eventually we're going to find somebody in the minor leagues. That's what I'm going to probably say all year long, because I want to see somebody from the minor leagues come up and do really well. I mean, that's why another reason I love Jackson Merrill so much, because we drafted him, we saw him, and we brought him up. Yeah. Let's do that. We're not always going to have talent like that coming up, but we're going to have good average major league guys come up from the minors, and let's bring them up.
There's no question, and that's a debate that a lot of front offices have, that, flexibility versus the guy is going to, perform, or you hope is going to perform really, really well. I think positional flexibility and roster flexibility is important, but I think talent is most important. And if you have a chance to bring in the most talented player, I do think you prioritize that over roster flexibility. Again, we'll see if Jason Hayward can find the fountain of youth and Connor Joe can mash lefties, and who knows, maybe it'll work out. I think everyone hopes it will. These are two, grade A human beings who have overcome a lot in their careers, and no one wants to see anyone fail. I just think from a roster decision standpoint, I think the money could have been used a little bit more wisely. Heath, I want to go into a more, lower profile signing, but one that could potentially pay off for the Padres. That's signing Kyle Hart, the lefty, who previously pitched for the Red Sox, went over to Korea, reinvented himself, won the equivalent of the Korean Cy Young Award. They signed him again, 1 year deal. What grade would you put on this signing?
Honestly, I give that like a B, because what this kid has gone through over the time is, nothing was easy for him. And he's, he went to Korea, he was in Japan, won the Cy Young over there. And the kid doesn't throw really hard. He just pitches. In today's day and age, there's not a lot of pitchers. So I think if they give this kid a chance and let him be the fifth guy in the rotation, he'll probably end up being the third best guy in the rotation. If they just let him pitch and they don't bounce him back and forth. Because the guy, I've been watching a lot of them, highlights here and there, and the guy pitches. And that's one thing that we miss in the MLB right now with guys pitching. They have unbelievable stuff, and they throw godly how fast they throw now, but they don't really pitch. When they don't have your best stuff, Hart can probably still win you a ball game. If he has probably half his best stuff, he's going to go out there and, fun, no pun intended, but he's got heart that he's going to go out there. He's going to give you the best chance to win, and he's not going to be like, well, I just don't have it today. He'll figure it out. He'll throw the kitchen sink. Yeah. So I give it a B, probably a B plus, if they use him correctly. But I like this signing because it kind of shows, hey, I think he has potential, so let's give him a chance. And some guys like that don't ever get chances. And then when they do, they run with it. And I really think that, he has got a really good chance to run with it. So I'm rooting for you. Come into spring training, dominate, kid. And, man, you got a lot of guys rooting for you out here.
Yeah, I agree. I give this a B as well. Again, it's a low-risk deal, 1-year deal with a club option. It's very affordable for 2026. And we've seen so many players like this who, struggled in the minors. They go over to Korea. They learn to pitch backwards. They learn to, really hone their secondaries. And they just have that opportunity to pitch through their struggles and learn from it and get better. So many guys have gone over there and come back and been really, really good. Merrill Kelly is probably the biggest example of that. You also have Chris Flexen. You have Eric Fetty. Again, it's not a 100% hit rate. Josh Lindblom went over there, dominated, came back and struggled. But on the whole, I think this is certainly a really good upside play for the Padres, getting a guy who, like you said, lefty who can really pitch and, has had a taste of success and now is going to come back over. I think for the low price they paid, it's a really good opportunity for him to seize a job. And even if he doesn't win it out of camp, he provides you some starting depth. He can work as a swingman. He can come out of the bullpen. He just does so many things for you. So I thought this was a really good signing. Heath, there's one other signing we need to talk about. Just came down the pipe earlier this week. That was the decision to sign Yuli Gurriel to a minor league deal. Decorated veteran, 40 years old. What do you give this one?
It gives me hope that I can come back. I think they're trying to find, spark in a fire again, or whatever the comment is. They're trying to find, they're hoping that, he could be the DH guy, maybe, play a little bit of first base, give a little spark to the fans, kind of what Profar did last year. I think that's what they're kind of looking for. And, he's a veteran guy. He's been around, and hopefully, he can keep the team together. Or maybe he's a good guy in the clubhouse. So it's just it's an interesting signing if you ask me. If you ask me, I give it like a C to C minus just because of his age. And AJ doesn't usually do stuff like that. Just sign a random guy that's really as old as he is. So it's kind of interesting why he did it. So, and I'm still baffled if you don't get it right now, because I'm still trying to figure out why.
Yeah, I give this one a D minus. I think Yuli Gurriel, look, let's just be frank. He had a great career in Cuba, really good for a few years, but he hasn't been good for about 3 years now. There's just very, very little to offer. And I know it's a minor league deal, but it becomes a major league deal, $1.75 million if he makes the team. And if you have $1.75 million to give out, go give it to Ty France. Another right-handed hitter, young. Again, this is a really good hitter who got hurt last year, was in a bad situation in Seattle where they fired their hitting coach a month and a half into the season. That entire offense completely tanked. The offense approach that team took was just horrendous last year. Get him back. He's healthy. He can hit. He's young. If you want a right-handed first base DH complement, I'd rather give $1 million guaranteed to Ty France than potentially be on the hook for $1.75 million to Yuli Gurriel. I just didn't see the point in the signing. There were a lot of better options. And I just, again, we'll see. He probably won't make the team, but I just don't understand the investment.
Maybe they're good friends or something. I mean, that's just like I said, that's just one of those things that you're like, huh? Like a few years ago, we had Eric Hosmer and I forget who else. We signed like 2 first basemen in spring training. So all of a sudden we had 4 guys, and one first baseman was making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it was like, what the heck are we doing?
Well, I think this reminds me a little bit when the Padres signed, Nelson Cruz and Matt Carpenter. You talk about older guys trying to catch lightning in a bottle a little bit, and they were able to do that last year with David Peralta and Donovan Solano. But the key thing with those 2 guys is those guys were, in their primes, elite contact hitters, and that's a skill that can stay with you even after you lose some of your athleticism, even after you lose some of your defensive versatility. That natural rhythm and timing and feel of getting the barrel to the ball, that's kind of innate. That stays with you. You know, Jason Hayward is not that elite contact hitter. Yuli Gurriel was in his prime, but has not been for many, many years now. Again, I have a feeling that the signing of these older guys is probably going to go more the way of Nelson Cruz, Matt Carpenter, which did not work, than Donovan Solano and David Peralta, which did work.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's just, I like Donovan Solano. I thought we should have re-signed him, but I don't understand why. I mean, especially, like you said, you got 1.7 if he makes the team. Why not just spend it over here? So yeah, it still baffles me why we signed, Grendel. But hey, who knows? So lightning in a bottle. That's the saying I was trying to think.
No worries. So again, I think this is going to be a very interesting spring training for the Padres to see if some of these guys, and again, I want to be clear, there's some things here that they absolutely deserve A's for. There's some things that you can see B's for, and there's also some C's and D's. And I think that's true for most teams. You can look at some things that say, yeah, this made sense. Some others where you say, yeah, that didn't make so much sense. And we'll see what moves they continue to make throughout the spring training as we get to opening day. Again, the roster today is not going to be the exact roster on March 27th. But we'll see how it all shakes out. And again, anytime you're predicting the future, inevitably something will go wrong. So I guarantee you that some grade we gave on this podcast, this show today, will turn out to look very, very dumb in October. But at the end of the day, this is what we think now. We'll see how it all shakes out.
Just remember, I don't remember what grade I got, but I know Royce Ring. When I got traded with Royce Ring over from the Mets, everybody said I sucked. I was horrible. And Royce Ring was the guy. And I made the team out of camp. Royce was up there, but then we traded him to Atlanta. So you never know. That's why I think it really affects on the player. Was the player going to come in and just say, hey, I'm going to do what I do, or hey, I'm going to reinvent myself. I'm going to do something crazy here and just go off. So who knows? We just have to wait and see. That's the best thing about baseball. You never know. I mean, you might get guys that just dominate in April, then suck by May. So, or you get guys that just tear it up, and you're like, where did this guy come from? How's this guy 40 years old and dominating? Or how'd this guy go over to Korea? And why did not more guys go after him? So you never know. That's what I love about baseball.
Yeah, that's why they play the games. We'll see what happens. But here are the grades Heath and I have now. And we'll also keep an eye and see how Austin Hayes, Cal Quantrill, and Ty France do this year. And if, at the end of the day, it would have made more sense for the Padres to take them, or if they were onto something. We'll find out. Heath, it's been a pleasure. I know we're all excited for the first spring training game tomorrow. We'll both be watching, and baseball's back. It's a great time of year.
It's awesome. Love it.
All right, everyone, that'll do it for another episode of Friar Territory here on the Foul Territory Network. Go ahead and subscribe, give us a like, leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. For Heath Bell, I'm Kyle Glaser. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.